It sure does feel good to get out of the city for a spell, don't it, Betsy? Reverend Hankins smiled as he opened the door for his aged wife of 43 years. The couple was enjoying a short getaway from their home in Huntsville, Alabama, to the Smoky Mountains of East Tennessee, where they had been staying in Townsend to avoid the hustle and bustle of them there big crowds in Gatlinburg. In Reverend Hankins' mind, if a man comes to enjoy the beauty of the mountains, least he can do for himself is to do his best to stay away from those tourist traps. As the couple drove their 1948 Buick down the narrow two-laned highway, surrounded on one side of the road by a crystal-clear stream meandering through the ancient boulders that were strewn throughout the creek bed, and the other side walled in by majestic, sheer rock cliffs, Reverend Hankins spotted a small mom-and-pop restaurant up in the distance, tucked on the side of the road next to the mountain creek. "Mama, how about we get some victuals before we go off exploring Cades Cove this morning?" And Betsy agreed, and the two soon pulled into the gravel parking lot, and within moments they were seated at a small table in the corner of the restaurant. As the two looked over the breakfast menu, the wily preacher noticed an elderly white-haired man with a shaggy beard going from table to table, greeting each customer as if he were the proprietor of this business. Yet his homespun dress and casual demeanor wasn't that of a businessman. Nah, it was clear to the Alabama preacher that this fella was clearly a loafer, just passing time by bothering folks who just wanted a quiet, peaceful meal. Reverend Hankins leaned over to Betsy and whispered, "I sure hope he don't come over here and start meddling with us." Right on cue, the stranger made his way to the vacationing couple. "Howdy, folks. Where you'uns from?" Without lifting his eyes from the menu, Mr. Hankins replied, "Huntsville, Alabama," in a monotone voice. "Well, I declare, it sure is good to have you here in the great state of Tennessee, my friend. I hear tell that the cotton crops are looking mighty fine down there this year. I reckon you're in the farming business, are you?" "No, sir. I'm the senior pastor of First Free Will Baptist Church." "I see. So you teach preachers how to preach, do you? Well, boy, howdy. Have I got a story for you." And just like that, the stranger pulled up a seat right between Betsy and her husband, who was busy trying to maintain a hospitable disposition. "Great, just what I need, a preacher's story," Reverend Hankins thought to himself. Wasting no time, the stranger started out. "You see that mountain right there?" As he pointed out the window, in the distance across the stream. "That there is Thunderhead Ridge. Well, anyways, not far from the base of that mountain is Rudd Holler, and back in the head of that holler, there sat an old house that was nearly falling in on itself. It was there that a young boy named Ben grew up. Now, I reckon he had a rough time coming up, because you see, he was born to an unwed mother. And back then, that was a recipe for a hard life. And poor old Ben, everywhere he went, folks would ask him, 'Hey boy, what's your pa do for a living?' Or, 'I ain't never seen you with your father.' That's right, every time he was at Miley's general store, he saw folks whispering and a-pointing at him. Same thing at Nelson's drugstore. Old man Nelson would look down over his spectacles and whisper to Miss Thelma, 'There's that fatherless boy again.' Even at school, if there was one thing that young Ben hated more than anything, it was recess. All the kids picked on him and called him a mama's boy. It got to where he'd just stay in a classroom, helping the teacher while the other kids played. And the truth is, old Ben, as much as he loved his ma, he couldn't hide the fact that he was jealous of all the other kids who had fathers. He did the best he could to steer clear of any situation where someone would ask him who his father was. 'Cause the truth is, he didn't know. And I tell you right now, there ain't enough words in the dictionary to describe how bad that hurt him in his heart. Well, anyways, when Ben was about 12 years old, there was a revival down at Taylor's Chapel Baptist Church. Each and every night for a solid week, there was a new preacher, lighting a fire in the seats of every pew, with a furious tongue lashing to each and every sinner in the place. Now, Ben's mama had made him go to the meetings each and every night, and old Ben had gotten pretty good at sneaking out of the church during the invitational or during the final prayer. 'Cause you see, all these new preachers would stand at the door with shaking hands and wagging tongues, wanting to know everything about everybody who exited the church. So, on the final night, just as the congregation was preparing for the final prayer, Ben knew it was time to make his move. And just as he started scooting away from his mama to head for the door, even though her head was still bowed and her eyes were closed, she reached out and caught him by one of the belt loops up his breeches. When the praying was over, everybody headed for the door, waiting her turn to shake the visiting preacher's hand. Now Ben, he did his best to stand behind his mama, out of the view. Yet, the preacher caught a glimpse of the young boy and let out a hearty chuckle. "Well, hey there, young fella. It's so nice to meet you," the preacher said as he laid his hands on the boy's shoulder and said, "Where's your father? Is he here? I'd like to meet the man who's raised such a fine-looking boy." And I tell you, right in that instant, the whole church got so quiet, you could hear a pin drop. Ben's heart just sank, plumb near to the soles of his shoes. His worst fear had come true. And here he was, to be humiliated again, and this time in front of the entire church. The new preacher, though, using discernment that only the Holy Spirit could have provided in that moment, he sensed the uneasy situation. He leaned down and smiled just as big as he could, and put both hands on Ben's cheeks and said, "Wait a minute. I know who you are. I see the family resemblance. You're a child of God. I see it in your eyes, son. You've got a great heritage and a great future. Now go claim it." Something as simple as the caring words of a stranger instantly unlocked something inside of Ben. And for the first time, he smiled, and he walked out of that church revival a changed person. Oh, he was never the same. From that day on, anytime anyone asked him about his father, Ben would proudly proclaim, "I'm a child of God." Just then, the white-haired stranger stood up from the table and looked over at Reverend Hankins. Now, wasn't that a great story? Well, actually, it was a great story. Thank you for sharing it with us. Just in that moment, as the old man turned away to leave, he said, "You know, I reckon if that new preacher wouldn't have told me that I was a child of God, I probably wouldn't have amounted to nothing." And he walked away. The old preacher looked across the table at his wife, and both of them were truly stunned. The waitress came over and placed the ticket on the table, and Betsy asked, "Miss, do you know who that man was? The one who just left our table?" And the waitress grinned. "Oh, honey, of course I do. Everyone around here knows him. That's Ben Hoover, the former governor of Tennessee." And now, my friends, you know the rest of the story on the boy who would grow up to become the 31st governor of the great state of Tennessee. Make sure to like and subscribe for more stories from Appalachia's past.